a lot of different people, different ideas, attitudes, expectations. So definitely you need different reports, and these reports need to be quite concrete for each of our stakeholders. And that's why the first thing to do before you start even think about reports, you need to identify your stakeholders. And on each software development, you have some typical two parties. It's a customer side and it's a delivery team side. It can be even more complicated that you have more delivery sides if two teams are doing different things, but you need to integrate them and you need to basically, each stakeholder belongs to one of these groups. It's a customer or it's a delivery. But on each of these sides, you have plenty of different stakeholders. When on each customer, you have end users, you have business users, sponsors, managers, and on our side, you have a delivery team, so it could be Scrum team or another methodology, but they consist of the roles like developer, testers, architects. They should be cross-functional. But then you have many others. You have managers, you have sales, you have executives. So a lot of different people. At first, identify them, but then next step is to understand them. And the really important thing is that you should always consider if it is a good idea to have a group of different people as a stakeholder. Because sometimes it's a better idea to decompose this bigger group to smaller pieces when you have individual people, and these individual people or roles, let's say, are defined by their attitudes, mindsets, and so on. So I always use some kind of checklist when I do understanding lessons for stakeholders, when I ask them several questions, when it could be like, what do you like? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? How your typical day looks like? How your typical quarter looks like? Or if you could change 3 things right now, what these 3 things are? And so on. And if the answer to these questions, if they are the same for all people in that group, then it's fine to have a group of the people as a stakeholder. If they are different, you have a different stakeholders. And you should do it for each stakeholder you identify in previous step. And important is that we often do it on the people on the customer side because we think, yeah, we need to understand them. But we always or often forgot about the people on our side. And we are the same important and as they are, so we should do the same exercise with basically everybody in the delivery team and other stakeholders from our teams, because we would like to be satisfied too. And I cannot imagine to do something 8 hours per day, which I don't like. So spend some time to identify these needs, also in your teams. And when we identify and when we understood our stakeholders, it's time to think about the report. And reporting is the way how to measure something. And each goal should have a measure, because otherwise you will not be capable to say if I'm there, if I'm on a correct way or not. And each report is prepared for concrete stakeholder or more stakeholders. Then for each report, we can say it needs to have 4 main attributes. When the first is, it should deliver expected information. When we understand the people, we know why we are preparing such a report, we should deliver concrete information. It's not a good idea to mix too much information to one report, because then having, I don't know, a big table with a lot of information, everybody will be lost. So always deliver 1 or 2, maximally 3 informations in one report. And the next step is that it should be done in the most efficient way. Because sometimes chart is good, but then another time table is better. But why we are preparing reports? Every report should address some emotion or feeling of people, because people are emotion-based creatures, and you always would like them to understand the report in the best way, in the same way as you understand it. So if you are preparing a report and you would like to make them sad, because we have a lot of defects, you should prepare it this way. You should not hide something. Or if you would like to evoke the emotion like everything is good, we delivered everything in the sprint, then it should evoke the good emotion in the people. And why we are trying to address emotion of the people by report? Because we would like to trigger some action. The report will provide evaluation, but then something needs to happen. And if we prepare each sprint some report about, I don't know what's the example, number of defects, and nothing is happening, then why we are spending the time to preparing such reports? It's like because somebody asked us to prepare it? No, you really should always, even like fight for the action from the report. Hey, we have a problem, we should solve it. And when we define the reports, then you have a lot of possible reports in Agile projects, there is one very important attribute of each report, and it's a context. And context of report, it's a collection of unique facts on each project. So it could be time, it could be stakeholders, people, starting points, strategies, methodologies, and so on. And it could happen that in the same project, two different stakeholders have a different opinion about the same chart. So we have this guy, and he's saying, yeah, it looks fine. And the girl, she's saying like, I don't think so, it's not good. That's why for each report, you really need to explain the context, even in the project. In the concrete project, everybody needs to have the same explanation, and I very often provide them with some bubbles for the chart, so it could really look something like that. Let's say that this chart represents number of defects. So it will be like, this was our starting point. We all know why we were here. And then there was an increase due to the fact that we, for example, did some refactoring of a very complicated code. So increase of number of defects. Then we killed it because our developers fixed defects, we retested them, and we ended in this solution. And the learning from that could be more regression testing or more analysis before we do that. If you provide your stakeholders with such explanation to every report, then you have high probability that they will understand it same. So their understanding will be, okay, we both feel the same emotion, and we probably, all of us, we will agree what to do with that. With the context of the project, there is one connection with, I think, most dangerous thing about reporting and all, and it's comparing. There is always some guy on your project who will say, but on my other project. Or less harmful is like he will say, on my previous project. It's good, people are learning based on their experience, but managers, typically managers, they will say, but I have another team, and there is another same report, and it's saying something different. An example from our real world could be number of defects. Let's imagine you have two teams which are following same methodology. And on the first project, your testers found 50 defects. On your second project, testers found 5 defects. But what does it mean? Without context, it could be that on the first project, your testers are excellent and your developers are poor. But it could be also that on the second project, your developers are excellent and there are no defects. So without context, even same report, same measure, you cannot compare them. At first, understand the differences. So that was enough theory, and now I would like to demonstrate my most important reports which I use on all Agile projects. But at first, what is Agile? And there are a lot of Agile definition, and I like this one. Agile is continuous stream of value at sustainable pace. And these two adjectives are really important, continuous and sustainable. Because it's not hard to succeed in 1-2 sprints, it's hard to succeed in 20 sprints and to deliver the real value. So it should go piece by piece, continuously. And Agile loves circles. And I don't want to break this rule, so I will demonstrate it on one of the most typical circles in Agile. And it's a plan, implement, evaluate, deliver, accept, and back to planning. When in planning, we have always several levels of planning in Agile, when for today I will consider only two: release and iteration. When iteration, it's a short period of the time which should have fixed length, and it's based on personal responsibility, and the most important thing that it's a commitment. When you have a planning of your iteration, you are promising your customer that in the next 2 or 3 weeks you will deliver this, and you should trust it. It should not be like, maybe we will deliver this. The maybe, it's in a release. Scope is not fixed, but the scope of iteration, it should be really promised, and you should commit to that. That's why the first visualization, which is very important, it's this planning on the task level. And when you are planning your sprints, you know your team members, and you should evaluate their capability, how many hours they are available for your work. So you think about holidays, you think about some other projects, and so on, and then you get a number. But the important then is that you should not expect that if you have a number of hours they can deliver you, that they will deliver 100% of that to your project. Because nobody is really working 8 hours per day on the project, like focusing on that work. Like, you should plan maximally 80%, and even that's it's challenging, like 6 hours per day, maybe if we are productive, but not a rule, definitely. So this visualization will provide to, okay, this guy, we planned too much, and this guy, which is me, we planned too less, so you will see this. And you plan your iteration and your implementation start. And we say that it should be in sustainable pace, so we should measure it. And it's about measurement of progress, when the most important chart is a board. Every Agile methodology uses some kind of the board. In a Kanban, it's the only visualization. You don't have a Burndown charts and so on. But even when you do Scrum, you should have something like that, some board, when at least once per day you meet the team and you are asking basically two questions, like, is it moving, and do we have some bottlenecks? And that's why we have stand-ups basically. But yeah, it was a joke, like we do stand-ups so we are Agile. It's not true. And the important thing about stand-ups is that they are more about listening than talking. So you should listen to your team members, you should know what they did, because you would like to provide your support, your help, and so on. And if things here are not moving, then there are two options. First is it's underestimated. Second could be that you have too big user stories. Let's imagine that this user story is for 3 days. You have no chance to see any progress here for 3 days. So think about to make them smaller, to decompose them to sub-user stories and so on. The second thing, or second chart, which shows you the progress, it's Burndown charts. They are a plenty way how to approach Burndown. I like the way that on this axis, this blue, it's a number of hours in the sprint. And this is time, of course. And this curve shows you how ideally you should burn your hours. And important is this green one, which it's in story points. And it should be increasing because this is a number of story points your product owner accepted. So ideally, it really looks like that. But there are typical problems connected with that. First is that blue is not going down. And even if you have a big user stories, you have no reason that it's not going down, because every day your developers, your testers, whoever has a task there, he should log hours. Even if it is for 3 days, he should say, this day I spent 6 hours. So it's not any excuse for that. Another typical problem connected with this is that you do not plan your sprint in advance. That you will start here, and then it's growing. And that's a terrible thing, because you should be able to predict if you are capable to deliver. It's a commitment. And if you start here, and then you are increasing, how you can commit to that? So for each sprint, it should really start, plan entire sprint, and then minimize changes during the sprint. And the last and sadly very typical problem is that this green one is not going up. It means that your product owner is not accepting, that he's not involved. It could be for time constraints. If you are a big team and you have only one product owner, then he's too busy. But it could be also that he's rejecting. He says, but it's not what I want. Then probably you need to consider during your requirement sessions and during planning. And the last chart about trend is this cumulative diagram. When it's a simple distribution per statuses, so on the start you see that everything is in defined status. Then things goes to in progress, and by the end all should be accepted. This is how this chart should look like. I never saw that. You always have problems, and the problem is that this line are not following. So if it is a long time in progress or defined, then the typical problem is that you underestimated that. If this line is not following with acceptance, then time problems or product owner doesn't agree. You agreed as a testers and developers it's done, but he's saying it's not done, so you should discuss it with him. Target is these lines are following. So far it was not too much about testing, but to be honest, testing is only a small part of our quality assurance work, but now we will speak about testing metrics for a while. Then the first and my most favorite chart is defect trend. If I should choose only one testing related, it would be this, because it shows everything. This red one shows a number of defects found each day. Green one shows number of fixed defects in each day. And this one, it's number of all open defects. And let's imagine this is an iteration. So from the start, we found something, like 4 defects on the start. That's probably something from previous sprint, because nothing is ready yet. Then there was nothing, and then big increase. So this is probably that developers finished some user story, bigger one, and we start testing and we found a lot of defects. Nothing, and then again. If you are lucky and you see something like that, the green will react on that. So developers start fixing. But then you have another problem. Same problem and same problem. And if your defect trend chart looks like stairs, I guarantee you that it's always the same reason. It could be different reasons in each team, but the reason for these concrete stairs is the same. Bad understanding, poor unit testing, whatever. And area between these two is basically your technical debt. You are building this, and you should always target to react, to fix it as soon as possible. Because if these two lines are too separated, you will never fix it, and it will kill you by the end of the project. And this one, does it really mean that we started this iteration with 35 open defects, and we ended with the same number, almost the same number? Yes, it means, and this should be considered during planning. If it is too high, in next iteration you should say, hey, we are not delivering any new user stories, we will be simply fixing bugs, which managers hates because they say, I need to deliver user stories. No, we need to deliver high quality, even if it means we will not deliver some user stories, because this needs to go down. One thing which is missing on this defect trend chart is the severity. Does it mean this increase was all high severity or critical severity issues? You don't know. Of course, you can create 3 different defect trend charts per each severity, but better is to use bar charts. Then you again have a number of found defects and open defects, and you can see that, okay, this is kind of normal severity, so a lot of them, but then an increase of high, but we kill it in one day. So this will provide you with information if we really are capable to fix high severity defects in the reasonable time. And then a question what to do with these defects. If you have a lot of open defects, but they are normal, then maybe you should close them, just won't be fixed, because it's effect on your project. Like, this will be frustrating you an entire project, and in the end, they will not be fixed because they will say, it's okay. So think about that in advance. What about normal? We can close them as one fix, nobody cares. And the last, from a testing perspective, It's about test cases. We all have test cases, and we found a defect, so we would like to understand there are defects, and we need to map them to some areas. And we do test cases. It should be on abstract level. It's a different topic. But actually, only we are, as a testers, we are interested in test cases. I never saw a customer who would ask me how many test cases failed. They are somewhere here on some kind of tree level. This is a feature for him, big feature. There could be 50 test cases under that. He just wants to know how much is passing, how much is failing. Is it generally good or no? How much is blocked? They don't need that. We need it for our testing, but they don't. So this was about evaluation. And now we are in delivering phase. And in each sprint, we should really deliver working software. And you should be honest with your customer. You should show what was delivered. You should show what was not delivered. And you need to provide them with explanation why. Back to context. Explain them why we didn't deliver it. And same with the defects. Simple table, what defects we found and what were fixed and what is open. And the most important column is really this one. For each open defects you found, there should be explanation why it's not fixed. Because main target, fix it in current sprint. If not, give them an explanation. And mostly it should be will be fixed in next sprint. It was because of the time. And then we are in the accepting phase. After each demo, after each sprint, we should have a demo. But our customers, they are capable to provide us with a very basic feedback on the demo. Yes, it looks nice, or it doesn't, but that's not enough. They really need to accept after each sprint. So basically, they are one sprint behind us, and they should test, and they should say, this is really what you delivered in the previous sprint, meets my expectation. It means it's kind of accepted from the point of acceptance testing. And this chart should be then generated twice, because first column is what was planned, what was delivered, what was accepted, and what was customer verified. So this is our product owner, this is customer. So what happens here, we underestimate it. We deliver this, our product owner is not accepting something. What does it mean? Is it wrong? Customer, if it is so low, it's usually not about that you did it wrong. It's because they are not used to the new methodology that they should test. So typically this means they are not testing. They are not doing what is expected, what is in contract for them. Next sprint looks better on our side. Delivered, yeah, everything works fine. This is improving, so now the question is like, does it mean that the rest is wrong or still not tested? You need to ask your customers. This sprint looks bad, but we are back to the context. It's that maybe one of our developers was sick, so basically it's a good sprint. Like, yeah, we delivered less, but everything was accepted. And this column, that's a fairy tale. So let's expect that our customers are testing. Even that is challenging, like to make them test. But then we should compare how much they found and how much we found. They will always find something, but they should not find too much critical defects. Otherwise, they are testing something different than we are, and we have bad requirements. So compare it based on severity, how much we found, how much they found. We should find more. And then I said that the quality is a satisfaction, and we need to measure it. And we need to measure it on our side. Then we use retrospective. After each sprint, we have a retrospective. We identify good things and deltas, or let's call it bad things. And if you do not have any good things, then you are probably too pessimistic. If you don't have any bad things, then I don't trust you. And having a lot of bad things, it's not a bad idea. But the most important is this column. This represents things which we found here, and we didn't mitigate them. We didn't do anything with that. So that's a problem, because then if this is high, then your retrospectives are not constructive. It's kind of crying session. Yeah, we know, we do it wrong, but we are not doing anything with that. So why we are crying? It's a fact of the project. Most important column. And how to measure customer satisfaction? Sometimes they are if your customer is very agile, he's on your retrospective. But sometimes it's not a good idea, because at least my experience is that retrospective is kind of loudery. We really have a lot of emotion, sometimes screaming and so on. So I propose you to measure some customer satisfaction in another way. And really do it on the level of concrete individuals, concrete persons. I choose 3 people like Adam, Barbara, John, and you should ask them several questions after each sprint. In real life, it could be like 10 questions, something like that. I choose 3 typical ones which I use. It's like, the first one is how delivery meets your expectation. Second is, what do you think about problem solving? And then general feeling. And ask them to provide this feedback after each sprint. And then you can see that first sprint was quite good for everybody. But in the second sprint, it was good for Barbara and John, but something is wrong with Adam. And now back to the context. You need to find out why this guy is not happy. And it could be because we didn't deliver his user story, the most important one for him, because simply we misunderstood it. So he's not happy. He's saying that problem solving we tried, but we didn't succeed. So this guy is the most important for you in the next iteration, because you would like to make them all happy. And this chart is the most scary thing for managers, because they are afraid that customers will use it against us, that they will always say everything is wrong. But that's not true. They will learn how to cooperate because they found out this as an opportunity. I can say something was wrong, and if it is true, you will do something with that next sprint. If they have no way to say it, then they will be pissed off. And then release. Release is a longer period of the time. It's not commitment. And first chart which you can use, this was your iteration, cumulative, and this is release. Several iterations again. These lines should be following. And why I show this, one iteration can be bad, but then you should see improvement. It never looks like that. And if, for example, here you have a problem, you again should connect it with your context, and you should understand why you have a problem after 5 iterations when previous 5 were okay. And then a planning board. If you are doing your grooming and so on, okay, you can plan it in advance, and you can say to your customer, based on our velocity, we simply cannot deliver these stories. We already planned all our iteration, and this is not feasible to be delivered. The scope, it's not frozen. We are not compromising quality, we are changing the scope. And customers, if they are involved, they know why we are. Probably we implement more in previous iterations. So these were several of my reports which I always use. There are plenty of others, but sometimes these are enough, because if your customer is involved, if you understand them well, then you don't need to provide a lot of information because they know it, and these are enough. Sometimes you need root cause analysis and so on in bigger teams. Always think about why you are doing the report, and remember that it's really not about reports. And if reports, then context, but it's all about your stakeholders. And you would like to make all stakeholders satisfied and happy, and then they don't need a report. Reports usually are needed when something goes wrong, and then they are helpful, because you would like to analyze why and how to improve it. Thank you.
Пожалуйста, ваши вопросы. Бегу.
Which trackers you usually use to make this analytic?
Which tool?
Trackers, bug trackers, some tester systems.
Okay. Most of my project use Rally, and other project use Jira. So these two mostly, and then Excel. I really like to export things from these tools and to do some analysis in Excel. But nowadays, Jira really, they provide all of these possibilities, predefined reports. So it's more like what report I need, and then it's easy to do the report in these tools.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the report. And I would like to ask, in terms of reporting, what would you prefer, which approach, Agile approach, Kanban or Scrum?
That's a good question. And it always depends on the context. And in my company, we work with big corporations which are not used to Agile. So that's why I like Scrum, because Scrum has more pressure. And if to that customer I say every 2 weeks, or actually in our company every 3 weeks, we will deliver, you will be on demo, then you will test, you will provide a feedback. It's a discipline for them. On the other hand, if they have some experience with Agile, and if they would like to be really involved, then a Scrum is maybe better, because it's like, when it's ready, every day, basically we can release. You see on the board what will be released, it goes to you and you can accept. But my experience with big customers, it doesn't work, because then you lose the pressure and they need it. If Agile is hard for us, it's harder for customer, and they need to have a habit, and it needs to be structured. So that would be my answer. And the reports are the same. Yeah, in Kanban you don't have a burndown chance, you don't have a commitment, but rest is the same. You have then analysis about work in progress limitations, which is the cool thing on the Scrum, on the Kanban, that everybody works on one thing. It's not, you cannot have bottlenecks basically.
Кому?
I think it's difficult to measure the customer satisfaction. How do you this?
Customer satisfaction, I wouldn't say it's difficult. I would say it's not typical, and they are not used to. And I use these questions. I have like 15 questions usually, like concrete question for each people, not to the group, because if it is group, you will lose a different opinion. And better, they should not cooperate. They should really provide you feedback. But you should not be scared about bad feedback, because it will very often start with a bad feedback, because they are used to, now I can complain. Previously, I had no way how to complain. So now I will complain, and it should not frustrate you. In first 2, 3 iterations, it will be really only about bad things. Then you will solve these bad things, and they will start proposing improvements. And from bad things to improvements, they will start saying good things. So it's about building the relationship with a customer. And the typical problem is that it's blocked by managers on both sides. On your side, they are scared. They will use it against us. On their side, they are also scared, because now they give a power to individual people, and they have no this power. And now it very often ends with the customers that they fire the manager, because they found out finally after 10 years their experience with software development, we can speak and we can be involved. So when you solve these problems, then it's easy.